look at that.
Get rid of the kid.
Sorry, I'm walking over a cat right now.
Yay! 30 years of
And then
slavery now. Hi, I'm Lena.
and I'm John.
And this is Culturally Different. Do you think that you guys have really more freedom than we do in Russia?
I used to.
What changed your mind?
Honestly, work.
Work here or work where?
Work here in the U.S. This is almost like a whole topic in and of itself, but like we say that we're free, but you spend most of your time at work, just trying to make ends meet. Most families, you need like two incomes.
Yeah, to support a family, especially because we are not businessmen or we don't work in, I would say, like in Russian gas and oil factories.
Yeah.
Simple jobs, regular people, don't have any, inheritance from rich aunts or grandparents.
Well, not yet.
Maybe. So yeah, it really is hard to live off one salary here. What also strikes me is actually that when people say, and I was born after the Soviet Union, I was born like before it collapsed. They couldn't travel, they could only watch movies from the Soviet Union, wear clothes from the Soviet Union and everything only from the Soviet Union. That seems very limiting to me, especially because I grew up in a bit different reality. But what strikes me here is that even though people can travel, they don't. Even though people can watch movies that are not made in America, they don't regularly. Even though people can experience stuff that is not American, they don't really want to do that.
Yeah, which on that point, we typically don't even notice that as Americans. We figure we've got like Jackie Chan, so we have our. Well, yeah, that's my point. Chinese. But we think we have all of these other influences and that we're really multicultural. We're actually not so much. We're actually pretty cut off from the rest of the world, which I really didn't realize that until I went out and saw some other countries. But yeah, that actually really surprised me about modern day Russia too, is that your average Russian actually travels outside of the country more often than your average American.
Even if those places can be Thailand, Turkey, or Belarus, Ukraine, but still
for us, those are exotic locations. Maybe not so much like Belarus and Ukraine, but yeah, I think a lot of Americans would like to travel to Thailand or Turkey. Maybe not so much Vietnam. That's actually another common Russian tourist destination.
Yeah.
A lot of us actually don't travel.
What's next?
Okay. And this kind of goes back to the old viewpoint that Russia is still a communist country, which again that's not true. But I think another common viewpoint is that people in Russia are generally poorer. You're dirt poor in Russia, or you're some ridiculously wealthy businessman. But yeah, when I got there, it seemed like that wasn't the case at all. There's actually a very large middle class. Just average people doing just fine.
I think that a person like me can talk about that because I've never lived among really poor people, I'm not from the family that was. Our family used to be poor, but not in a way that. Not for a very long time, and at the time when everybody was more or less like that, so it wasn't that different from anybody else. So it's not like being poor now. And I guess it goes to the definition of poor. What's poor for you? Is it poor that you like can afford going to a cinema once a month only because you're poor, or you're poor that you can't eat anything for weeks on end, and like
you can only afford Netflix and not Netflix and Hulu.
yeah, that's terrible. Middle class is different here, because it can be still middle class when you have a huge house, several cars, and you will still be middle class. And you still can be middle class when you don't have any of it. And for them, being rich is a different thing, too. Which actually kind of brings me to the myth that many Russians have about the US. Everybody here is rich. Again, maybe what they think is rich is driving a car, because you cannot live without a car here. So it's a necessity more than luxury. And having a house, because many people here live in houses, even though, again, it doesn't make you rich. Nobody knows how you pay for this house. It's not even your house, most probably.
Yeah. Well, oftentimes, like having a house makes you less rich. You have to
Pay for it.
I'm just thinking about my cousin. Like he was celebrating his mortgage.
Oh yeah.
It's like, yay! Officially a
Started
homeowner.
paying, yeah. Started paying mortgage. Yay! 30 years of
And then
slavery now.
yeah, and then stuff kept breaking in the house, and because it's his now, like now he has to fix it.
Yeah. Americans may be more generous, just on average, I guess. That makes this impression. When a Russian person goes anywhere, maybe they're more stingy and they just seriously behave more like, I don't know, cheapskates. And I have to economize on everything, but you guys just basically throw money around. I don't know, maybe that makes them feel that Americans are all rich, but it's not necessarily true. Wow. Look at that. Shoes in the house. There is a myth that you guys wear shoes in the house. We see it in almost every single movie. You guys wear shoes in the house. Why? And is it a myth or not?
Yeah, and by you guys, we mean like Americans, which would be like we guys for like me and any other Americans out there. If you're not American, we apologize if we just offended you by calling you American.
Why do you wear shoes in the house?
Oh, why?
Or do you wear shoes in the house? If yes,
I'm
then
on
why?
trial here. Honestly, it depends on whose house. I'd say like when I was younger, I definitely did it more often, except at grandma's house. You definitely didn't do it there. Like it's not uncommon. Basically, like as a good rule of thumb, like if you're ever invited over to an American house and you're like not sure, just just look around. See what other people are doing. If you're like still not sure, because a lot of times you'll get like half the people taking their shoes off, half of them leaving them on, which is like even more bizarre. But yeah, if you're still not sure, and it's best just to ask the host or hostess. But yeah, as far as like why we do it, honestly, I have no idea. It seems like maybe like the older generation doesn't do it so much. The younger one, maybe out of convenience, and maybe we're just like in and out so often. Instead of like kicking your shoes off and having to put them back on, you just leave them in or leave them on.
That's lazy.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if you're like in and out a lot, then
the only situation in which I felt that having shoes on was actually not a bad idea is when we went to a Christmas party to your aunt's house. and their basement is really cold.
Yeah.
So the floor was ice cold, and I was wearing just tights. Anyway, and then I was wearing shoes in the house. I was wearing the shoes in the basement because first of all, everybody was wearing shoes in the basement, and I figured that, man,
Yeah, ironically,
I will not be polite today.
That's one of the places I always take my shoes off to.
Yeah, and it was
Yeah.
really warm. I mean, it was warmer wearing shoes. But I, as a Russian, of course, I have concern over cleanliness, the different dirt and bacteria and viruses that come to the house. You have to take your shoes off and wash your hands. But anyway, I think it also depends on the state. Because some states, I guess, they will be more willing taking their shoes off. Some states probably less. But in general, I would say, with the concern over if it is dirty in the house because everybody is wearing shoes, more or less clean. I mean, it's not dirt. Dirt is not involved in it. In
it's
the
not
book.
like shoes are like caked in mud. Just like crossing the parking
Yeah,
lot at Walmart.
And you just
Yeah,
jump in the
usually.
bed after that.
Yeah.
No, usually it's cleaner, of course, but still. And what other myths do we have?
So this is one that maybe like more people than Americans, but I know, like, as Americans, we often have this idea that that Russians never smile. Like we've actually even like heard it in a few movies. I remember like the movie Miracle. Like there's this one scene where the American hockey team is passing the Soviet team. Just like on the street. Or no, it was at the game. They were like looking at them in their boxes before the game, and like the Americans mentioned, like, oh, those guys aren't smiling. Like they never smile. And one of the other Americans just says, oh, they're Russian. They get shot if they smile. But yeah, the stereotype that Russians don't smile, and it's true and not true, at least from my experience. They definitely don't smile as much as like we Americans do. But it's not out of like coldness or like being like unfriendly or like impolite. It's just a more reserved culture, and it seemed to me like once like you actually knew a person, and if they had reason to smile, then they would, plenty. Actually, like think about it. This is your challenge, your homework. Just like think about like how often you smile during the day, and
How often you
why?
really mean it?
Yeah, well, like just think about why are you smiling? Like I did that like when I got back from Russia, and I kind of like caught myself smiling at like ridiculous moments, and I smile less, but not because I'm like less happy now. I just realized that sometimes I was smiling and I didn't even realize why. There really wasn't any reason.
I can only add that there is a phrase very common in Russia that Russians will quote, I guess, to excuse themselves when they don't smile. We say that улыбка без причины признак дурачины, which means if you smile without a reason, you're basically a fool. And nobody wants to be a fool. Nobody wants to seem crazy. Nobody knows why you're smiling, so why do you smile? You smile at people you smile at people that you like in a way to flirt with them.
Little tip for like any Americans going to Russia: don't just smile at people on like the subway or a bus. It's weird. You're gonna creep people out. Just don't do it unless you're like deliberately trying to hit on someone. And then use your words. Don't be creepy.
guess we're ready to say bye. Stay tuned. If you like our channel, subscribe and press like to see more of the videos about Russia and America in the eyes of the American and the Russian. And see you next time. Bye.
See you later.